Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what
Hello
everyone
and
has
welcome
seen
everyone
before.
to Podcast Enterprise, where we take Star Trek, the original series episodes, and dissect them for story structure, character arcs, things that we like, don't like. And I am Bala Ramudurai, and with me I have my co-host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're discussing Friday's Child.
Friday's Child. That title itself warrants some discussion.
Yes, so let's start with the summary. When this episode opens, you find the USS Enterprise approaching the planet Capella. They are going to negotiate with the alien Capellans for their mineral, which is basically something that is used for their life support systems. This planet has an abundance of it. The mineral has to be mined, but to get to that, you have to negotiate with the Capellans first. And now these are a warlike, kind of violent race of huge humanoids. It's difficult to deal with them, but Captain Kirk wants to do it anyway. He approaches this planet, and he also has issues with the Klingons because they want the Topaline as well. When he beams down to this planet, he finds a Klingon already there. The catch here is that McCoy has already been to this planet and he knows some of the ways of the Capellans, which Kirk does not know. But before they could do anything, once they beam down there, one of the red shirts is killed. And this is how the episode starts. You have conflict almost immediately where one of the members of the Enterprise is killed. The Capellans, being who they are and being this martial and very difficult to deal with group of people, decide to confine Kirk and the landing crew, including Spock and McCoy, to this tent. It's a little hard for them to gauge what the Capellans want at this point. They are waiting there when this woman brings some food, and Kirk almost accepts it, but then McCoy persuades him not to because that will lead to further complications. They meet with the high tier or the leader of the 10 tribes of Capella, who listens. He's an elderly person who listens to them, but they can't really negotiate with him because of the Klingon, who seems to get along much better with the rival of the chief of of the Capellan tribes. And Kirk and the landing crew find themselves in all sorts of skirmishes. The current tier of the Capellans is threatened to be overthrown by this younger and more brash individual who calls himself Mab. He gets along quite well with the Klingon, apparently, which is bad for everyone concerned. The Klingon named Kras is the Klingon representative on Capella 4. He gets along quite well with the rival. He creates trouble for the Earth people because he understands the ways of the Capellans better. The Capellans do not want things like medicine and education. They want war all the time, especially with the rival to the current tier assuming charge after a bloody coup. Kras has a chance at securing the mining rights for the Klingons. After the current tier is murdered by the rival, the Capellans find themselves with a new leader. Kirk and the landing crew find themselves in a lot of trouble. First off, the consort of the previous tier, they find themselves with her and on the run towards a group of hills. They have to go there, find a cave. She's pregnant, she's about to give birth. She does not get along with McCoy, who wants to help her. And at the same time, back in orbit, Scotty in command, the Enterprise is lured away by a distress call from an SS Deirdre, but as Scotty discovers later, the SS Deirdre is not in that quadrant, and this was a fake distress call from the Klingons, apparently. And they try to waylay the Enterprise and create trouble up there in space. And Kirk and the landing crew down here, along with Spock and McCoy, they have to deal with this woman called Aileen, who is a Capellan. A search party consisting of the Klingon Kras and the Capellan Mab, as well as all of the other Capellans, have been released to search for Kirk, destroy them, and just get rid of their presence from Capella. Now, Kirk and Spock manage to outwit this hunting party that has come after them. Kras reveals his true colors and turns himself against the rest of the Capellans. They convince the Capellans to accept this alien son as a new leader of the Capellans. It's quite complicated. The Capellan who has been the pain for the Earthmen decides to sacrifice himself so the Klingon can be brought down. Ultimately, there's a new baby leader for the Capellans. A mining treaty is secured. Kirk and the crew are back in the Enterprise. The Klingons' efforts to thwart the diplomatic efforts of the Enterprise and the Federation is completely thwarted, and they're able to get the mining treaty and the mineral that they needed for the life support systems. Back to you, Bada.
Okay, 4-act structure. This episode starts with a teaser, and you already know that there are going to be a lot of skirmishes and treachery. So that's what you can see in the teaser. McCoy seems to know a lot about these people as he has spent some time already. Unexpectedly, a Klingon shows up in the teaser, which leads to an attack and a counterattack by one of the Capellans with the boomerang like thing, whatever that is called. Kligat, or yeah, Kligat, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, and it ends with a red shirt dying. So
Nice.
anyway, that's the end of the teaser. First act, we know that what is at stake. There's a mining agreement, but there's a Klingon, and Klingon also and seems to know everything and that the Capellans want. The first act starts with these people in a tent, seemingly under arrest, and they have to give up their weapons and communication devices. That's the in a tent is what McCoy, Spock, and Kirk are in a tent. That's how the first act starts. The entire act is about setting the stage for the conflicts within the Capellan tribes, the leadership particularly, and the fact that this Klingons and the Earth-led Federation, who also wants the same thing that the Klingons want. So several conflicts are introduced, and at the end of that is the third conflict where USS Enterprise seems to have got no answer from the landing party, and they seem to have got a genuine sounding distress call. So that's how the first act ends, with the introduction of all the conflicts. The second act starts with Scotty deciding to leave Capella 4 and head out as a response to the distress call, and they are gone. Now, down there on the planet, Captain and all the people are all busy fighting each other. This is one more episode where a fist fight out for no reason just breaks out, and that's what is happening in the start of the second act. There's a lot of people leaving, treachery, fist fights, and the whole thing. End of the second act is Kirk, Spock trying to escort this woman Eileen out of there, and they reached a place in like a cave setup and set up a sonic boom, or they plan to do that. This sonic boom with the communicators that Spock and Kirk set up blocks their way. That was a pretty ingenious move. So they have to go all around. That buys them more time to make weapons in this case. So that's how the second act ends. Third act starts with the Klingon sneaking a phaser from one of the Capellans, and now they start going all around in order to capture the Earthmen and Eileen. So that's their idea. McCoy has had his own problems with Eileen, which is established in the second act. And now in the third act, this intensifies because the baby is due, the baby is on its way out, and now they have to transport her to a safer place while Kirk and Spock have to build weapons to defend themselves till the cavalry can come. That's what, according to them. In the meantime, they've gone light years away from La in search of this distress call. At some point, they realize that this is probably a fake call, but Scott insists that they should search for non existent ships. The Enterprise decides to return to Capella because they know this is a fake call, and they get subsequent fake distress calls on the planet. Eileen has already given birth to the child. McCoy is knocked out, and that's where it is. So finally, my Enterprise is intercepted by a Klingon warship, and Enterprise goes to a red alert. and all people are asked to come to battle station, man their battle stations. So that's where third act ends with USS Enterprise on red alert, where with I don't know what's happening down there. I think just that Eileen has left them. That nothing exciting is happening there. And end of third act. Fourth act, there's a colorful ship. At least in the non-mastered version, there's a colorful triangular ship which seems to be blocking USS Enterprise's way. And then we have no idea what happens after that, because rest of the act is all about the mini war skirmish between Spock, the Klingon, and the Capellans, and Eileen somehow finding her way back to the Capellans, and so on and so forth. Finally, the baby is with McCoy, and they're all coochie coochieing the kid. Spock is terribly confused, and and at the end, we get to the name of the child, which is Leonard James Akar. Like DC Fontana decided to only give it to annoy Spock. So that's how it ends, and the little Akar named, and that was the end of the episode. So, Parvati, let's start with our analysis with what's up with this title, Friday's Child. What do you think?
So I think, and this is what I've also gathered from Memory Alpha, is that there was a variation of the nursery rhyme called Monday's Child in a 19th century edition of Harper's Bazaar. In that, Friday was described as a child of woe. Some a child doomed to a lot of sadness. I think that's what's been applied here because Leonard James Akar, he wasn't really wanted by his mother. She didn't want to have this child because he's the child of the previous Akar and she didn't have a choice in the matter. So and he was born during a time of a lot of conflict, and all of those skirmishes were also happening at the same time. So I think it has something to do with that. He was born during a very bad time.
So, folks, you should go and check out Memory Alpha. There is a picture of the first page of the script with the poem in it. Harper's Weekly 1887.
One difference I noticed between this version of the rhyme and which appeared in Harper's Weekly and the original one is the original rhyme has Friday's child is loving and giving, whereas here you have Friday's child is full of woe. So I think that suited the circumstances of our episode quite.
This is title itself is quite interesting, and I assumed it is Eileen's child, but why Friday child I'd never guessed. And yes, it wasn't a big turning point. The child is not such a big turning point in the script. The original script had that, and there was a lot of changes. But I didn't think it was pivotal to this episode. So
to Aileen herself because she was overlooked throughout her life by the Capellan society because she's a woman and there are some things expected of her. And she was obviously struggling. So she has been a child of war, so to speak.
That makes more sense than Leonard James Akar being Friday's child. Okay. Because she is the one who's full of hatred. She's only going from bad to worse. Her husband died. She doesn't want her kid anymore. It is the husband's child. It's not her own child.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, actually, I agree. I think there are layers in this episode.
She's one of those individuals who's found it difficult to deal with her own society, even though she's an alien character. There's a lot she has to deal with, but it's been very difficult for her, and I don't think she has had much happiness. It's always been serving others, and even the child is not something she would have chosen to raise at that point.
When McCoy is doing that thing, right? You must want the child, and he says this child is mine, and she just flips it around, saying, "Oh, the child is yours." So you got it all wrong. I agree. The McCoy Eileen sequences, all of them were really good. I like that. However, does this whole interaction with McCoy, she is totally happy with how he is able to find out how the baby is with just his hands and all that. She's so impressed that now she can look at him as her husband. No, but how does that happen? Suddenly she says, okay, fine, I'll now have my kid. How does that turnaround happen? I was curious.
I thought it was a little bit abrupt, but it seems that for the first time she was exposed to this male creature who is not like the others. And
Ah,
partly that could be because he is not a Capellan.
ah.
She was exposed to to a cultural aspect of a society that she's not used to. It occurred to her that it is possible for people to be nice and they can help her instead of just putting her in her place. That's what I thought.
Hmm.
And she has that kind of resolve and strength to turn things around and want to improve things for her. That's the impression I got, even though I did feel that some of the dialogues were abrupt during those.
Let's start with the teaser. They tell you that these are warlike,
Yes,
martial sort of rule there. So
yes.
it must be percolating even to women and this whole other aspects of society. It has its roots in the martial philosophy.
Everything
Wouldn't
is
you
very,
say that?
yeah, I think so. Everything is very clear cut in the society. The men are this way, the women are this way. There are certain
Hmm.
taboos and customs that you will follow. Otherwise, they will use the Kliget on you. It's all very clear cut. There is no nuance in the society. And that is
Hmm.
possibly because the terrain is very harsh and a very hot and difficult to live environment that they're in. So they have developed this martial and very violent and inflexible society. I
Hmm.
think that contributes a lot to the way they are.
Okay, that's a very interesting take on the culture. And what do you think? I'm a person who's totally unaware of what's going on in the story, but there seem to be no hospitals. So that's one of the things that
Yeah.
the Earth people find that needs to be there. The Klingons, I think, find it more in tune with how their society functions.
Yeah.
They are ready to offer whatever it is to make the martial philosophy even stronger because
Yeah.
it aligns with their values.
Yeah.
But Earth people, all they see is there are no hospitals. What do you take of this?
They do mention that they believe in survival of the fittest. So if you're going to be sick, you're out. They're not going to take you with them. And the Klingons, on the other hand, I'm not sure they were exactly supporting the lack of hospitals and the lack of medicine and that sort of thing. They were probably just playing to them because while this society is very martial and very black and white, and while they have all of these strict customs and inflexible behaviors, they are also quite naive. If you tell them we believe in
Hmm.
might, we believe in power, we believe in conquest, the Klingons do obviously, but you
Yeah,
play that
yeah.
up a little bit more, they will just follow you with that because they think
Hmm.
that is the only way to be. Whereas the earth people, they offer something else. They offer compassion, they offer softness, they offer medicine, healing, ways to keep your people alive. And that doesn't exactly align with the terrain that these people are in because they have been conditioned to survive in such harsh conditions that they just want to. If somebody is weak and if somebody is sick, they probably don't have the resources to kind of bring them back to life or to look after them or to tend to their fevers.
Klingons definitely played up to the imperialism. They are trying to fortify that by bolstering the opposing faction.
Yes.
He doesn't talk to the TR. I think he's already made up his mind that okay, I'm going to be fair here. I'll give the Earthmen a chance. Maybe I will look at
Exactly.
the Klingon also. Whereas
Mm.
Mob has said, okay, I totally subscribe to that. He has his own eyes set on the Tyr's throne, right? So
Yes.
I think that's what the Klingon played on. By making them fight against each other, it makes their job easy. So all they need to do is send forces like the core or guys. They will do the rest. They'll clean up, conquer, take all the stuff they want. We're done with this planet.
Yeah, and the Klingon idea of diplomacy is very much a farce. They're just there for the fun, I think. They have no intention of actually talking to them. And
Hmm.
the previous tier, the older tier, but while he was giving the Earth people a chance to talk and express themselves and tell him what they offer, I feel that he might have gone with the Klingons anyway because ultimately they have more in common with the Klingons, not everything in common because the Klingons are a very volatile bunch, but they seem to have more in common with the Klingon, and he might have gone with the Klingons even with the previous tier, and it took a woman's touch for the tribes of Capella to actually go with the Earth people.
This is definitely something that we see established in the first act also, where they keep talking about what does the Klingon have. Mob encourages that. Let them bring the goods, compare, counter offer, and all.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They're very impressed with how violently volatile the Klingons are. The men are, at least. But towards the end, with the new tier being a baby, the regent tier is Aileen, and she seems to be a little more level-headed as far as these customs and the culture of this planet. So she tends to go more with compassion and softness with the Earth people, is what I understood. Yeah.
Because she also received help in the form the exact same thing that Kirk was trying to sell. She was the first recipient of that, right? McCoy. She experienced the hospitality and the medical care. Definitely one of the reasons why they signed up would also be that.
And she also made a, while she did offer herself to be killed, she said to live would be preferable. If they had gone with the Klingons, they would just let her die. For the Federation and for the Earth people, her life does have value, and she has experienced something entirely different with Kirk and the landing crew than she has experienced with the Klingon and the Capellans.
Coming back to the first act, they start off with this scrupulously honest. That's what Kirk says, and there are lots of games going on. Kirk does detect that there are lots of undercurrents and games being played, also with the help of the Klingon. It's not as straightforward as probably McCoy thinks it is. But one of the first signs you see up there on the Enterprise is that they get a distress call at that time itself. They do, but they don't bother the captain right away because they don't know for
whether it's an actual distress call.
Yes.
I think personally, Bala, a lot of this conflict could have been avoided if they hadn't taken that red shirt down there with them. Rookie move, and McCoy, who claims to know their culture, should have warned Kirk not to take that guy because he saw the Klingon, he reacted in a very, in my opinion, that was kind of an unprofessional move. He got himself killed, and Kirk tried to explain his behavior, which didn't go down well again. So I think a lot of those fist fights and conflict could have been avoided if they had just left that guy up there on the Enterprise.
Yes, that I agree with that part, but I think Klingons had it planned also very well that this is how the Earthmen are going to move and behave, and this is going to be their strategy. So they actually outthought them. They also had planned that plant a Klingon there, and let's see what happens. So it was an explosion in the making. So it was a red shirt or no red shirt. There could have been something there. If
I mean, he would have come up with something.
Yes, absolutely. He would have done something there which would have made the situation volatile. Because it was possibly also part of the plan. I'm sure it was all instigated by the Klingon some way or the other for their benefit.
Yeah, you don't know what he has told Mab in the background before the story starts. He could have been filling his head with nonsense and trying to make him that martial spirit he has and turned him against his own tribe, basically.
Why I say it was all planned was because even the Klingon ship up there is right at the edge of their sensor range. So they see a blip, but they don't know what it is. They can't detect what it is. They know exactly what is the range, all premeditated. I think the whole thing was absolutely orchestrated by the
Absolutely
Klingon.
orchestrated, and it backfired spectacularly towards the end.
Of course. Of course. Yes.
It has to, otherwise we have no story.
Yeah, that is true. But again, there's a twist in the story. Right in the first act is Marv wins. He becomes the new tier. However, he goes back on his word and said, "Okay, now everything is up for grabs again. It's not up to the Klingon."
And he does observe that things look different now that he's tier. So he does have some sense of responsibility, which Kras, the Klingon, did not expect. For all his calculations, this he did not foresee, and he started losing his temper.
Yes. Now, Marv notices that only when Kirk challenges him to a duel. He says, "Okay, fine, let's have a duel." That was a brilliant move. Excellent tactician. Catch them by surprise. All their plans are gone.
The Klingons vastly underestimated what Kirk can do and how unpredictable he can be.
He can take down societies. I mean, one Klingon is nothing.
One Klingon is nothing. That was their second rookie mistake, sending down one Klingon. It was big mistake.
There you go. So that's a tactical mistake. It should have been the commander, not some. If they'd sent a warship, they had to send a commander down there. That would have been more interesting than that tactical one.
And the Klingons' tactics were also silly. They tried to lure the Enterprise away from there, and then they tried to block the Enterprise and then run away. And then you send this one colorful character onto the planet. One guy is not enough to deal with Kirk and Spock and McCoy. You need a whole fleet. Big mistake.
Exactly. And now into the second act, USS Enterprise has to leave the landing party. They managed to get the communicators. That was played very well, I thought. They didn't have the weapons in the communicator, but the USS Enterprise was in range. But when it went out of range is when they get access to the communicators. That was a good one. That was well scripted, I thought.
That particular portion where they left orbit in response to that fake distress call, I found it very interesting that Scotty did not notice that the distress call addressed the Enterprise by name in the beginning.
And yes.
Because it was just so subtly done that it is a mistake by the Klingons, but at the same time, it was a very subtly done distress call, and it didn't strike Scotty at that time until they were well out of range and far away.
One predictable thing was this in captivity, McCoy, Kirk, and Spock, with Eileen also in there.
He was thrown in there later.
I half expected Spock to say, "Sir, there's a multi-legged creature on your shoulder."
Yes. Spock was a little too staid here. We didn't have many multi-legged creatures here. We did have a lot of strange costumes with peculiar fur colors.
What's up with that? I mean, they were spectacularly tall, and with the mob looked the funniest. I thought the black and that colorful combination. Was it purple?
Cloak and those furry additions to the dress and boots. The headpiece, like a pinkish purplish headpiece. It was quite the combo.
Yeah, quite the combo. I remember this episode. I think I watched it a long time ago, and this is the only thing I remember. Their costumes, the funny looking mob, and his sacrificial act. He looks like a Y when he's standing, or like an X when he's standing there, and he just disappears into thin air. So that's the only thing I remember of this episode.
Yes, one thing that stood out for me here was how quickly Kirk punches them down. I mean, you have these big, huge aliens who are supposed to be very physically strong. And what does Kirk do? He punches them, and that's it. They fall over.
Yeah, like two punches, they're out, knocked out cold. Yeah,
knocked out cold. And considering how quickly we see the Kliegert used in the beginning, I'm surprised that they didn't use it when Kirk started punching them down.
That would be a first liner difference.
Yeah, they didn't use it at all. So what's the use having it?
Later, they use it to kill the Klingon, right? That's the second time that we see it used.
The first time, of course, the poor red shirt got it.
Red shirt and then
the Klingon. And then the Klingon. Even though he had a phaser with him, he didn't stand a chance against the Klingon. It's interesting how everybody dies the same way. You throw a Klingon at the chest, it'll kill either a Klingon or a human. Everybody dies the same way. Yeah.
So I have to talk about this, the slap fest.
Yes. We must
Eileen
talk about
McCoy
this.
slap fest. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, I don't know. I found it pleasantly refreshing after all that fist fight. The slap fest was much more welcome. The way he refers to it later also is amazing.
He's trying to do his job as a doctor, and here's this woman about to have a baby. He gets a slap, and he tries to help her again, and he gets slapped again. She seems to enjoy it. And that's when he decides to slap her back. That kind of that impressed her, I think.
Yeah. So, like you said, there's this person from another culture who seems to be different, sensitive, and very helpful. But when it comes to counter offensive, he's right up there.
He didn't even hesitate. He just slapped her, and that's it. And she was impressed. This is something she's not experienced before.
Yeah. And later, when Kirk asks him, "So, which manual did you use to impress her?" "Oh, the right cross did it."
And him trying to get her to accept her child also backfired, because she finally says this is your child.
Yeah, because I think they have always been told that this child is always the man's child, or the husband's
Yeah.
child. So who's the nearest guy who's all right? Okay, fine. Now let's do
Fine,
this
so it's
this
your
way.
child. It doesn't matter. It's your child. Then it seems like he wants his child according to her logic. So let him have the child. And it doesn't matter that he's not a Capellan. He is a man.
These are two sequences in which Kirk uses reverse logic, right? So
Yeah.
one is this whole sonic boom with communicators. So
Yes.
where Kirk proposes the idea. I thought it is Spock who proposed the idea, but
No,
it
no,
was
Kirk
Kirk who
did it.
proposed the
Yeah.
idea. And Spock starts wondering, oh, is this? Oh, then suddenly he does that reverse thing. If it's not possible, forget it. That was a bait for Spock to act on it. The second time he does that is with McCoy. If you're afraid, it's fine. Let's move on. You know, like, oh, come on, who said that? I'm going to go in there and do it.
He
So he
manages
does
to
it.
annoy McCoy quite a bit in that scene.
Yeah, I don't want a ham-handed ship's captain here.
Yeah, you keep out of my way. That's it.
That was awesome. Both places uses that
And
reverse
yeah,
logic to get
I
his
love
way.
that dialogue where he says, "Look, I'm a doctor, not an escalator. Will somebody help me with
Yes.
this woman?"
Oh yeah, that's the best one. I'm a doctor, not a dash.
Yeah, I'm a doctor, not a so and so.
Yeah, it's that was really good. That part and them, making those weapons. Yeah, in the end, it turned out to be very potent. Spock used all his skill in crafting it from I don't know wines, was it wines and bark? That's
It
what they
was
make
very
those.
effective. Even though the phasers were lacking at that point, the bow and arrow works just fine. And
Mm,
apparently, the Capellans hadn't invented it, so they didn't know what it was or how to defend themselves from it. It was
yeah, so
ingenious, actually.
with the resources that they had, they could come up with weapons.
And they
Of course, the
actually got the
first, yeah,
Klingon with the bow and
yeah,
arrow.
they managed to hurt him so that he couldn't move much.
Yeah,
But then it was effective. They got one or two Capellans and managed to hurt the Klingon as well.
the Klingon, yeah. And this is where I had a problem because you see people beaming down onto strange planets without armor. And
Ah,
the Klingons are doing the same thing. And if he had some sort of protection, I don't think the arrow would have pierced. But nope, he just had to wear a shimmery dress and go down there, and then he got shot.
yeah, that was strange. And then that leads us to the our child.
Our
That's
child,
our
yeah.
child, and everybody is like, "What? Our child?" It's a long story.
And McCoy bring our child. And it's quite the predicament for McCoy because he manages to help her, and now he's trapped in this other thing he doesn't want to be in.
Yeah.
She misinterprets just about everything because she's not used to it, but it's quite comical. He tries to explain things to her that she does not quite grasp because it is
Mm,
so alien to her, first of all. And she's
mm,
tired, having
mm,
this child. And then on top
mm,
of that, that kid gets to be, she doesn't really want that child. And he makes her want the child, but according to what she's used to, it has to belong to a man, like you said, also.
mm,
So
mm.
she kind of divides the child. It's partly hers, partly McCoy's, and it's all very confusing for him and very amusing for Spock and Kirk.
Yeah, that part was really amazing. The other part that I found interesting, Scott's handling of this whole distress call. If there's a distress call, genuine distress or genuine sounding distress call, that's your
Mm,
first line of duty. You have to go attend to distress calls. But when you have your suspicion and they've come so far out in space, it's
mm.
clearly a diversion. You already found out that it's probably a diversion from where
And
it
you know
was.
there's a Klingon ship there.
Right, there is a Klingon ship there. You found out some kind of a blip and still go in search of a non-existent ship. That I mean, Klingons might have just put a poster up there saying, "Jackass, you followed this." Okay, let's stick around and find out who put this poster. Oh, come
Oh,
on, move from.
and it was incredibly frustrating. SS Deirdre, supposedly called the
Mm,
Enterprise by name so much later, and he still
mm,
sticks around there to continue the
yeah.
sweep. And how much time was wasted over there with his suspicions? They are too far away from the planet. The captain needed something, but the Enterprise wasn't an option.
Exactly. If not for their bows and arrows, this is a done deal. They would have been trampled over by the Klingon and those guys. Yeah.
Completely. And it was a little bit frustrating when there was a distress signal again. But by now Scotty has had enough of it, so he's gone straight back.
Finally, he says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Chekhov says, "Oh, that was a probe invented in Russia,"
and
he smiles.
So he's just dragging them. He's making things up, and he knows if you're going to get annoyed, and so he might as well give it a go. It's funny. There has to be some diversion on the ship. Everything is getting so serious and so monotonous.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. This is where it got interesting that there was a red alert at the end of the third act, and I was really expecting their exchange or some such thing, but there was none. All we see is a bunch of red shirts appear at the end of the fourth act. So I was deflated because third act ends with that, right? Ship, red alert, and all that, and we don't see anything after that.
Everything gets resolved very peacefully after all of that. And even the Klingon ship, it doesn't attack. It just hovers there and then runs away. So
yeah, exactly.
Not much purpose was served by the Klingon ship. I think the Klingons mismanaged the whole thing, because if you were going to take on the Enterprise, you might as well send in a warship. I mean, instead, they're just hovering there, playing silly jokes and pranks, and then getting away with it. And then everything is resolved a little too neatly by the end. And yeah, that was a little confusing. After all those fights and fist fights and bows and arrows, and then the sonic attacks, and the Enterprise getting diverted, I too thought that there would be some sort of spectacular showdown in the fourth act, which we didn't get. And it was a little deflating.
Yeah, all this, the only spectacular thing that we got was the mob making an X and giving up.
Yeah, that was it. And the Klingon, being injured and in a bad mood, decides to destroy him, disintegrate him.
That was it. Yeah.
Considering that Mab had really horrible fashion sense, at least you don't have to look at the outfit.
That was obliterated also, along with them.
Yeah, maybe he got on the Klingons' nerves also with that horrible outfit. So.
It was shimmery versus the purple outfit. So
yes, and no purple outfits are allowed for the Klingons, especially.
So finally we get this Uchi Kuchi Ku and Spock going nuts with that. What the heck is that?
Yeah, Uchi Kuchi Ku, and Spock is what is this? What language is this?
And Kirk eggs him on, right? So
check the language banks, check the language banks, and I'm sure Spock will do it. He's not going to find it. Uchi Kuchi Ku. I can't imagine how that registered in Spock's brain. It would have been hilarious.
Yeah, they have fun at Spock's expense. Even at the end, right? He says you're insufferably pleased.
Insufferably pleased with yourself forever. At least a month. So we have it all, broken down into timelines a month.
Yeah, absolutely. That was fun. So, what are your likes and dislikes from this episode?
I liked the character of Eileen, even though she was quite infuriating. She was able to manipulate the rest of the tribe to do what she wants. It's not always effective, but given the environment she's been raised in, she's able to still think out of the box and do something to protect the Earth people and maybe try to bring about some sort of change. I thought the overall concept of the Capellan tribes was very interesting. The martial codes of conduct and the rigid cultural norms that they have, those were interesting, and I liked viewing them. But we didn't go in. It was all a little too black and white. As for what I didn't like, maybe the costumes, and I'm a little disappointed with the Klingons because they didn't behave like the Klingons you would expect. When they're introduced with the Organians in our previous episodes, we did see that they can be very tactical and very, very violent. Here they came across foolish, playing jokes on the Enterprise, and not attacking, which was surprising and a little out of character. Also, the change in the Capellan society was brought about too quickly. It could have been done with more elaboration. What about you, Bala?
Same like you, I like Eileen as a character in this because she is a center point, and now I know why the title is so named. The tribes, and it is very relatable. The tribes, the intertribal fight, the chief, and people aspiring to be the next chief, hence will side with anybody which will get them that goal. All that was perfectly in line with, and I could relate, or we've seen stories from history about how that was easily done by outsiders.
Yeah.
That was really nice. I loved the slap fest. McCoy Eileen slap fest was the right cross which does the trick, and McCoy Eileen exchanges was something that I really liked in this whole episode. Respect to what else did I like? Well, I had very high expectations given that this is a script written by DC Fontana. Other Side of Paradise is something that I also enjoyed. I thought this would be something like that, but it wasn't. So probably it didn't meet my expectations, so to speak. But like you said, the concept is interesting. I like this because Star Trek in the first season and many of the episodes in the second season deals with advanced civilization. But what about civilization which are where the humans are more how do you deal with that? This is one of the few episodes that deal that way. Organians start off like that, but then they turn out to be way advanced. So I think this was the one episode where you can see how to deal with that, particularly when you want something from them. I like, from that point of view, I really like this episode. I have seen this episode in the past. I thought I didn't like it much. I went with the same feeling, but I actually didn't mind watching it. Will I watch it again? I don't know. Now, what didn't I like? What is my in this episode? This whole USS Enterprise, this jackassness of Scotty. Come on, it's frustrating. That's the part. Get it till he is fooled. He realizes you have to start coming back. Maybe just to buy time so that Kirk and Spock have their heroic deeds there. Maybe that was the plot device there, but I don't know. I was not convinced. I was expecting a phaser fire because Klingon ship comes directly in the path, which means they're up for a fight. And Klingons never give up on a fight. They don't back out. They always fight till the end. I found it very out of character that they just slipped out. That is never a thing with Klingons.
Yeah, like I was saying, the Klingons were a bit disappointing, getting Scotty out of there and then running away, playing hide and seek.
More pranky than real tactics. Exactly. This whole mob sacrifice was soft. He just comes out there and says, "Klingon, get me, kill me."
And the Klingon did. Very obliging.
And then the Klingon did. I mean, he just obliges. So it's like, wow, what's up with that?
I mean, why? That was based to himself, basically.
So just because Eileen showed up doesn't mean that he can now forfeit his life. Is that what does that mean? Was that
he just sacrificed himself for what? He shouldn't have. He really shouldn't have.
Our hypothetical question: if DC Fontana were to appear in this podcast, we ask her to explain or to change.
There's only one question that I wanted to ask her regarding the Prime Directive. So if Kirk interfered with Eileen's life when she was prepared to die, Kirk saved her. She was prepared to sacrifice herself when the new tier took over. And Kirk saved her life. So isn't that interfering with the culture and society of that planet? And isn't that in violation of the Prime Directive, changing the way things were supposed to go, interfering in bringing human values to this planet when you shouldn't? That was the only thing that I wanted to ask her. But now that I think of it, why is Scotty so dumb? Could we have an explanation for that too?
Yeah.
What about you?
Why did you deny us of it? Would have been glorious.
It was glorious, yes. We were denied all the glory. But Kirk didn't get his glory either, so I guess we are not too badly off.
Yeah, we will never see a Klingon human fight anyway. All right, so thank you so much, Parvati, for the intense analysis. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us, and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or Trekkies. Live long and prosper.